Hello, hello, hello. It's your man again, Diego, Ife, and I'm back with part 7 of the Lateness of the Hour series, Popular Culture, Politics, the Sex Revolution, and its impact on the modern dating world. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day and weekend, and this particular upload is being recorded at BST 2:05 PM on the 13th of April, Sunday. I aim to get this uploaded today, but failing that, it will be as soon as possible. Now, today's episode is part 7 of the series, and it's looking at the dating and mating landscape in the 1980s. Without further ado, let's launch into it. Now, the 1980s began with Ronald Reagan commencing his Republican presidency.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Hatfield, Mr. Chief Justice, Mr. President, Vice President Bush, Vice President Mondale, Senator Baker, Speaker O'Neill, Reverend Mumaw, and my fellow citizens. To a few of us here today, this is a solemn and most momentous occasion. And yet in the history of our nation, it is a commonplace occurrence. The orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution, routine.
Once in office, Reagan set about the task of bolstering a corporate elite with tax cuts for the rich, reducing government spending, and making lavish wealth the new American dream. Tax cuts were justified by supply-side economics or trickle-down economics by pointing to deregulation as the panacea for increasing tax revenue by incentivizing productivity. It is understandable that the viability of Reaganomics was questioned due to his policies of addressing the economy he inherited. The country experienced 2 recessions in the space of 18 months. Once in January 1980, of course, what a lovely welcome, and July 1981. Now, the 1981 to 1982 recession was the deepest since World War II. The unemployment rate peaked at 10.8% in December 1982. The 1980s US economy can also be described as a decade of job growth and industrial shifts. The decade saw a new conservatism arise in social, economic, and political life, which was reflected not in only Reagan's administrative policy moves, but also that of his UK counterpart, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
He called her the best man in England. She called him the second most important man in my life. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, the former movie star and the grocer's daughter, the odd couple who formed one of the most important political marriages of the 20th century.
Mr. President, Henry David Thoreau once said that it takes 2 to speak the truth, 1 to speak and another to hear. Well, sometimes one of us has spoken and sometimes the other. But together, Mr. President, I would like to think that we have spoken the truth.
Thatcher's words in 1981 when she was President Reagan's first foreign guest to the White House. But the mutual admiration began long before that.
Reagan's emergence was also a reflection of the political economic challenges Americans had experienced in the 1970s and which had undermined their confidence in the government and fellow citizens. Perhaps you can put this down to reflecting hyper-individualism or a spirit of hyper-individualism. At the core of Reagan's emergence was the rise of the populist conservative movement known as the New Right. The New Right enjoyed unprecedented growth in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The movement appealed to a diverse assortment of Americans, including evangelical Christians, anti-tax crusaders, advocates of a more powerful American presence abroad, and it affected white liberals and defenders of a free market with few, if any, regulations. The movement resonated with many citizens who had once supported more liberal policies, but who no longer believed the Democratic Party represented their interests. Does this sound familiar in 2025? It's almost as if there's nothing new under the sun, as this is a sentiment that was held in the 1980s. I don't know, my mind just went back to the recent sort of political, shall I say, electioneering and the American election some months back in 2024. Yeah, like I said, it just came to my mind. But in any case, moving on. During and after the 1980 presidential election, these disaffected former liberals came to be known as Reagan Democrats. They contributed millions of crucial votes to the victory of Republican Reagan, the former actor and the governor of California, over the incumbent Democrat Jimmy Carter. In some ways, the popular culture of the 1980s reflected the era's political conservatism. For many people, the embodiment of the decade was the young, urban professional or yuppie, essentially a baby boomer with a college education, a good paying job and expensive tastes.
Miami Vice, while only cracking the top 10 in ratings one year, 1987, had a significant impact on men's fashion in the late 1980s. Fashion tended to mimic what was being worn in movies, on television, and by musical performers.
Many people derided yuppies for being self-centered and materialistic, and surveys of young urban professionals across the country showed that they were indeed more concerned with making money and buying consumer goods than their parents and grandparents had been. Again, what the elders do in moderation, the youth will do in excess, and if the environment is enabling, what we will cover is inevitable with the right conditions. Anyway, moving on. There was a perceptible change with respect to the movies of this era. Unlike the 1970s, when hard-hitting movies addressed controversial subjects,
Americans in the 1970s also loved going to the movies. The decade produced many classics, such as The Godfather, that are regarded as being amongst the best films ever made. Films like Taxi Driver, The French Connection, and Chinatown provided audiences with a glimpse of dark, gritty reality.
More light-hearted productions emerged, such as Ghostbusters. Die Hard.
You know my name, but who are you? Just another American who saw too many movies as a child. Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne, Rambo, Marshall Dillon.
I was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually. I really like those sequin shirts.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
The Breakfast Club. And Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, you should be coming on pretty soon, dude. How much do you smoke?
This'll be a little demonstration of that. Listen up. That was my skull. I'm so wasted.
All of which kept audiences riveted and box office receipts high. Several blockbusters were also released. E.T., Industrial, Beverly Hills Cop,
Jesus Christ. He almost gave me a heart attack.
and mammoth franchises like the Indiana Jones series.
Jones, do you realize what the Ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God. And it's within my reach.
You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. I've got nothing better to do.
Lindy, come back home now!
Next time, Indiana Jones, it'll take more than children to save you.
Many now famous directors honed their craft of dark, serious movies like David Lynch in Blue Velvet. Back to the Future.
Marty! You gotta come back with me. Where? Back to the future. Wait a minute, what are you doing, Doc? I need fuel. Go ahead, quick! Get in the car!
No, look, Doc, I just got here, okay? Jennifer's here. We're gonna take the new truck for a spin.
Well, bring her along. This concerns her, too.
Wait a minute, Doc. What are you talking about? And what happens to us in the future? What, do we become assholes or something?
Oh, no. You and Jennifer both turn out fine. It's your kids, Marty. Something's gotta be done about your kids.
Hey, Doc, you better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
And Star Wars series.
George Lucas released Star Wars, which shattered box office records. By the end of the year, the film had earned more than $300 million, making it, at the time, the most successful motion picture in history.
And The Elephant Man.
Ladies and gentlemen, the terrible Elephant Man.
Martin Scorsese in Raging Bull.
Harder. Yeah? You throw a punch like you take it up the ass. Come on. Harder.
That's hard. What the fuck? What do you
Take
want?
it off. Take it off.
Ah, come on. You want to stop now? That's enough.
Come on. Come
Fuck
on.
around,
Girl,
man.
come on.
Girl, huh?
I'm gonna smack you again. Throw it again.
That's enough. That's enough.
Harder.
Nah, your fucking cuts are opening and everything. What are you trying to prove? What does it prove?
And Gus Van Sant in Drugstore Cowboy.
You got a warrant? Yeah, I got a warrant. I got it pasted on the end of one of these slugs. Hey, you give me any more shit, I'm gonna give you a good close look at one of them.
Oh, heavy, man. You guys been reading too much Ricky Spillane or something?
Yeah, you don't seem to understand, Bobby.
All of which appeal to moviegoers, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in both domestic and international releases. But not everything was superficial escapism. There was a deluge of television series, sitcoms, and similar content in the 80s. Millions watched sitcoms such as The Cosby Show.
Oh.
Hello? This better be necessary. It's for you.
Hello. Good night, Mom. And don't come home with another baby.
The Simpsons.
Here he comes!
A funny little guy. Oh. Did you get the picture? picture? Was my crack centered? Bart, it was perfect. You liked it? I loved it. Thanks. Wanna go to the dunk tank? The gym teacher I hate is on the chair. Sure. Oh. Let's dunk that sucker. And on the way home, let's go deodorant shopping.
30-something. Family ties.
Alex, you want to take a break and join us?
I'm really busy, Mom.
We're playing Monopoly. Then you'll join us.
Monopoly? Are you kidding me? I'd love a game.
I thought you had a lot of work to do.
Well, Dad, I was thinking, you know, term papers and exams come and go, but the family unit is the one true constant in life. The precious hours spent in the familiar abode with loved ones playing a heartwarming game such as this are what make memories that one can treasure for all eternity.
When did all that occur to you?
As I was coming down the stairs. Are these dice in proper working order?
Yes, all the dots seem to be in place.
Okay, fine, Mallory. You're first.
Okay. 10. Oh, I'm on the jail square.
Relax. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're just visiting. Okay, my turn. All right. Here we go. Oh, nobody took the thimble. That's great. Here we go. Okay, let's have boxcars for Daddy. Double threes, 6. Okay, that puts me on Oriental Avenue. That costs $100. I'll buy that.
Okay, my turn. 4. Oh, income tax you have to pay.
Oh, that's not fair. Could I take a do-over?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Whoa, hold the phone. No do-overs. Page 4 of the rule book says, and I quote,
Alex, we're gonna let Jennifer take a do-over. Here's the dice, honey.
I won't stand for this. This is a travesty. This is a sin against capitalism. I'll be in the kitchen. You call me when it's my turn, okay?
Alex, you took one of those pills, didn't you?
Nope. Decided not to.
That's so, Alex, I can tell. You're completely out of control.
Mallory, don't be silly. I'm fine. Okay, Mom?
Yeah?
I was gonna give the kitchen floors a quick buffing. Where do you keep the wax? Never mind, I'll use my hands.
Roseanne.
I want you to rinse off this plate in the sink.
Whatever.
Welcome to the Hillbilly Day Spa!
Mom, stop! What are you doing?
You're hell spawn! Threw all my clean clothes on top of the dirty washing machine, and then she called me a stupid hillbilly.
I was being nice. She's a crazy, stupid hillbilly. You apologized to your grandmother.
And old. She said old.
Say it. I'm sorry. God.
Great. Now, you tell your kid to get her stuff out of the dryer so I can finish my laundry and go to sleep. Fun grandma loses her cool if she gets less than 8 hours.
Fine.
And married.
Oh, God, what a day.
I made an appearance as the Verminator at this elementary school, right? First, they make me walk through this metal detector. Now, I've got enough poison strapped to my back to dust an entire rainforest, and they want to know why I'm carrying a toenail clipper. Then there's the pat-down. First by the principal, then by the school nurse, then again by the principal while the school nurse watched. Finally, I make it into the classroom, and after talking the substitute teacher in from the ledge, we go to the cafeteria. where I taught the kids how to kill roaches, rats, and something they call sloppy joes. You know, it is a wonder I got out of there unscathed. You know, I'm telling you, that is the last time I appear at a Catholic school.
They also skipped broadcast network fare and watched rented movies on their new VCRs. By the 1980s, broadcast networks realized they were in serious trouble, as 60% of American TV owners had cable service. Soon, cable companies like HBO, Cinemax, TBS, and Nickelodeon were household names.
Fortunately, there were several technological advances that allowed families to be entertained at home. One of the most prominent was the rise of cable television. While cable was available in the 1970s, it did not become a household feature until the 1980s. Cable TV introduced families to a much wider array of viewing choices. Teenagers could watch the latest popular music videos on MTV or music television, while those seeking information could check out the around-the-clock news coverage on CNN, the cable news network. Sports-minded viewers could tune in to the sports network ESPN, while children were entertained by Nickelodeon. Cable television also brought rise to children's daytime programming. Every day after school, kids would rush home to watch the latest episodes of G.I. Joe, Transformers, Thundercats, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and the Real Ghostbusters.
In 1980, the cable news network first aired, and soon, CNN became a major player in delivering US and international news via satellite worldwide, 24 hours, 7 days a week. 1 year later, another reactionary cable network, MTV, made its debut and completely changed the way Americans thought about music, dance, and fashion.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In terms of the music landscape in the 1980s, MTV aired a high volume of music videos. This in turn spawned many megastars, Duran Duran, R.E.M.
This one goes out to the one I love. This one goes out to the king.
And Culture Club.
You don't have to touch it to be wrapped up in emotion like me. Everyone must feel how I do, yeah.
All of which were bands. Solo artists such as Madonna,
last night I dreamt of San Pedro. Just like I'd never gone, I knew the song. A young girl with eyes like the desert. It all seems like yesterday, not far away. Tropical, the island breeze, all the nature world is free. This is where I long to be, La Isla Bonita. And when the summer played, the sun would set so
Whitney Houston.
Few stolen moments is all that we share.
The unique genius, Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson's 10 best songs.
You've been hit by a smooth criminal. Put them share up together.
MJ's elaborate thriller video helped sell 600,000 albums in the 5 days following its first broadcast. Later, MTV became a forum for those who went against the grain or were left out of predominantly white Yuppie culture. Rap and hip-hop artists such as Public Enemy.
Elvis was a hero the most, but he never meant to me. You see, straight up racist, the sucker was simple and plain. Cause I'm black and I'm proud, I'm ready, I'm hyper, I'm amped. Most of my heroes don't appear no stamp. Sample all look back, you look and find nothing but Reagan from 400 years if you check. Don't worry, was the #1 jam. Damn if I said you could slap me right here. Get it? Let's get this party started right. Right on, come on. What we got to say? How do the people know the lay? Make everybody see in order to fight the powers that be.
Channeled the frustration of urban blacks into their powerful album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. But because of MTV's consistent promotion of white artists and bands on MTV, other venues soon opened up for emerging acts.
We're coming on
BET, or Black Entertainment Television, premiered in 1980 as a challenge to MTV by promoting black bands and musicians. Hard rock acts such as Metallica and Guns N' Roses captured the sense of malaise among young people, particularly young men. The 1980s also saw the growing popularity of electronic music. music.
With that house music, you can't go wrong. Give me that house music to set me free. Lost in house music is where I wanna be. It's gonna set you free. Rock your body. It's gonna set you free. Rock your body. It's gonna set you free. Rock your body.
Reggae.
We've got the mind of our own, so go to hell if what you're thinking is not right. Love would never leave us alone. I in the darkness, you must come out the light. Could you be loved?
New wave and other dance club favorites. In addition to being a platform for music, MTV also influenced fashion. People across the country and the world at large did their best to copy the hairstyles and fashions they saw in music videos. Soon, musicians such as MC Hammer and Boy George
Loving in your eyes all the way. If I listen to your lies, would you say?
also became style icons. And as an aside, around 1990-91, I had one pocket MC Hammer trousers.
You can't touch this. Can't touch this. My.
And I actually perfected the hammer time. I smashed it. Yeah. But that's an aside. I just thought I'd share that little few second anecdote. Anyhow, moving on. But behind the gloss of MTV, another influence grew in both music and fashion. Punk culture and new wave fashion, especially in London, grew from a late 1970s trend into a potent 1980s fashion force globally, with designers such as Vivienne Westwood leading the charge. Ripped jeans and jackets, replete with safety pins and other metallic adornments, Doc Marten boots, spiked hair and heavy makeup were all the rage. Other fashion trends from the 1980s included athletic wear, such as running shoes or basketball shoes, tracksuits and leg warmers, now becoming worn as everyday clothing. The preppy look, which mimicked the clothing worn by Ivy League students and buttered up professionals, invaded college campuses and nightclubs alike. Following the success of the official Preppy handbook published by Lisa Bernbach in 1980. Now, another significant development in the 1980s was the AIDS crisis.
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS, started as an exclusively gay disease. This depression of the immune system can lead to a rare form of cancer, Kaposi sarcoma, which shows up as those purplish spots. This cancer has a death rate of 80% 2 years after diagnosis. AIDS also causes unusual infections, with death rates of 100% in 2 years. This is not a benign disease, nor is it limited to gays, as we are now finding out. So far, 75% of cases are homosexuals, but 14% are heterosexual drug addicts. 5% are non-drug using heterosexuals with no other risk factors. 5% are Haitian refugees, and 1% are hemophiliacs who presumably caught it from blood transfusions. Females who are partners of male drug addicts can get the disease, and also infants of female drug addicts. What do we know so far? AIDS appears to be a virus transmitted through blood, semen, saliva, and other body secretions. There is a blood test for the disease. A study of the gay population in New York came up with some horrifying figures.
It has been done in New York, and they found that as many as 85% of otherwise healthy gay men showed evidence of imbalance in these tests of the immune system. We suspect from our experience here that we would find a similar finding.
Given the incubation period of 2 years, there could be a major epidemic in the near future.
Do you suspect that it's possible that this disease could be spreading from the gay population in San Francisco to non-gays in San Francisco and thence on to other cities?
I suspect it is spreading, and I suspect it will continue to spread to other areas of the country.
In walking around the hospital today and talking to doctors and nurses, one gets a feeling that there is some fear among health professionals here about contracting this disease themselves.
Special precautions are now beginning to be applied to hospital personnel handling AIDS patients. For instance, gloves are worn when drawing blood. Although San Francisco General does not require gowns and masks in handling AIDS patients, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta is now recommending that precaution to protect doctors and nurses.
There's a lot of anxiety. All of us that are taking care of the patients go through periods of personal anxiety about getting the disease. We don't know what we're dealing with, and we don't know how it's spread.
One major question raised is the safety of blood transfusions. The test for AIDS costs $160. Requiring it on all donors would make blood prohibitively expensive. Some have suggested not allowing gays to donate blood, but of course non-gays can have the disease also. What about the new hepatitis B vaccine? It's made from the blood of gay men. Its safety is now being questioned.
My understanding is that it's coming from gay men who have been victims of hepatitis B, which is the same community where the AIDS is most rampant now. Since we don't know just what the infectious particle is, I know there is some hesitancy now in the various departments, particularly among infectious disease here at the hospital, as to who should be receiving the vaccine.
In 1981, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and other sources began reporting on an outbreak of unusual health conditions in otherwise healthy young men in New York City, San Francisco, and other urban areas. Within a few years, an alarmed public learned about the spread of a deadly infectious disease now known as AIDS, or acquired immune deficiency syndrome, transmitted by direct contact with bodily fluids. Because it was initially dismissed by many, including the political and medical establishments, as occurring only among gay men, the disease spread rapidly, with at least 100,000 US cases and an estimated 400,000 AIDS cases worldwide by the end of the 1980s. After news broke that several popular figures, including Rock Hudson, Keith Haring, Magic Johnson, Greg Louganis, and Liberace, were infected with the disease, the government, medical officials, and the general public rallied to prevent the spread of AIDS and offer help to those affected. Just as an aside, if I recall correctly, Rock Hudson was a famous Hollywood actor who was friends with Reagan, who himself was also an actor. Just saying, given he was president and how emotionally charged this development would have been, it is quite possible that Reagan was influenced by his friend / associate's illness. In any case, Red Ribbon supported AIDS. Clothes, books, cars, and public buildings, including the White House. Wow, I had no idea about that prior to this research. The first antiviral treatment for AIDS, AZT, was available in 1980 and was followed by several others that were more advanced. Nevertheless, the disease remains a health threat up to this day, as we all know it to be so. Women also had an increased presence in the news. Expanding on the hard-won rights that women earned in previous decades, women were leaders in many arenas in the 1980s, from politics to science and the arts.
Mrs. Thatcher, already party leader, automatically became Prime Minister.
Morning. Morning.
She gathered around her an experienced cabinet of ministers, most of them her political elders. But once installed in office, Mrs. Thatcher soon showed who was in charge, dividing the cabinet into what the press called wets and dries. The wets, those who seemed to lack the toughness and determination she demands, were moved out of important posts or offered jobs they didn't want.
Maggie Thatcher was elected as the first woman Prime Minister of Britain, and Corazon Aquino, following the assassination of her husband, Senator Benigno Aquino Jr., was ushered into office as the first woman president of the Philippines.
The people then turned out in the streets and proclaimed me the president of all the people. It is on that faith and the obligation it entails that I assumed the presidency. As I came to power peacefully, so shall I keep it. That is my contract with my people and my commitment to God. He had willed that the blood drawn with the lash shall not in my country be paid by blood drawn by the sword, but by the tearful joy of reconciliation. We have swept away absolute power by a limited revolution that respected the life and freedom of every Filipino.
US astronaut Sally Ride became the first American woman to fly in space.
Dr. Sally Ride was the first American woman in space, making history aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger on June 18, 1983. Born in 1951 in Los Angeles, she pursued physics and became an astronaut in 1978. Ride flew on 2 space missions in 1983 and 1984, and later focused on science education, especially encouraging young girls to pursue STEM careers.
On the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1983.
I will send to the Senate the nomination of Judge Sandra Day O'Connor of Arizona Court of Appeals for confirmation as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. She is truly a person for all seasons, possessing those unique qualities of temperament, fairness, intellectual capacity, and devotion to the public good which have characterized the 101 brethren who have preceded her. I commend her to you, and I urge the Senate's swift bipartisan confirmation so that as soon as possible she may take her seat on the court and her place in history.
In the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor was appointed by President Reagan as the first woman to serve as Associate Justice. Arguably, the most famous woman of the era was Princess Diana, who married Charles, future King of England, in an elaborate 1981 wedding, which was televised and watched by 750 million people globally.
I only pray you'll never leave me behind, because good music can be so hard to find. So hard to find. I'll take your hand and hold it closer to mine. Yeah. Our love was there, but now you changed your mind.
Her visage was to grace television screens and magazine covers for many years thereafter, until Diana's untimely death in 1997. God rest her soul, and I'm sure with those who are listening, they have many memories, enduring memories and images of her work and her being profiled in the mainstream media. In any case, moving on. There were several disasters, both natural and man-made, that made the headlines in the 1980s. The decade began with the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington.
Northwest side. A7AGG, W7WFP. Oh, now we've got an eruption down here. Now we got a big slide coming off. The slide is coming off of the west slope. Now we got a whole great big eruption out of the crater. And we got another that opened up on the west side, and the whole west side, northwest side is sliding down.
The Titanic explosion claimed more than 50 million lives and destroyed thousands of acres of forest and rangeland. In Bhopal, India, an explosion at a Union Carbide pesticide plant in 1984 led to the worst industrial accident in history. At least 2,000 people died and another 200,000 were injured when poisonous gas enveloped the city.
The scenes are simply hellish. So much suffering from India's invisible killer. At one point, an official said one death was being recorded every minute from the poison gas leak in the city of Bhopal.
The enormity of the tragedy of Bhopal, India is becoming more apparent this morning. Authorities now say the toxic gas that escaped from a Union Carbide plant on Monday has killed at least 1,600 people, and they say another 50,000 people may suffer serious after effects such as blindness and sterility. The Union Carbide insecticide plant has been closed, of course, now. Outside, vultures devour the carcasses of animals killed by the fumes. Doctors are working around the clock at hospitals that are filled to overflowing.
Since the accident, the 500 doctors in Bhopal have been working without rest. But the number of people needing treatment continues to grow as more and more victims are found lying helplessly in their homes. Entire streets near the factory are nearly deserted, with houses locked up and empty.
Memories of the 1979 nuclear disaster at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania were revised when the Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine exploded in 1986, killing dozens of people, sickening many more, and sending plumes of radioactive particles into the air as far as Sweden. Mikhail Gorbachev would later say the Chernobyl disaster was perhaps the real cause of the collapse of the Soviet Union 5 years later.
What if I told you one of history's deadliest nuclear disasters was a major catalyst for the fall of a superpower? In April of '86, the world shook as Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, believed this catastrophe was the main cause to the collapse of his empire. But how? Chernobyl exposed the Soviet Union's flaws, failed safety protocols, lack of transparency, and an unprepared leadership. Not to forget the inhumane acts done by the government. The town wasn't immediately evacuated after the disaster. The Soviet government attempting to downplay the severity, allowing the May Day celebrations to go on. So, kids were playing and people were laughing, unaware they were being exposed to deadly radiation. Public trust shattered, international image tarnished. Fast forward 5 years, the mighty USSR disintegrates. Was Chernobyl the last straw
In Alaska, the pristine shores of Prince William Sound were stained black in 1989 when the Exxon Valdez tanker spilled some 11 million gallons of crude oil into the sea, killing hundreds of thousands of seabirds, otters, seals, and whales. Even 30 years later, pockets of crude oil remained in some areas.
March 24th, 1989, a date etched in environmental infamy. In the dead of night, the Exxon Valdez oil tanker ran aground in Alaska's pristine Prince William Sound, spilling 11 million gallons of crude oil into the water. The sea quickly turned to poison, devastating wildlife, killing hundreds of thousands of animals and contaminating over 1,000 miles of coastline. But what caused this catastrophe? Was it human error, corporate neglect, or both? The Exxon Valdez spill wasn't just an environmental disaster. It exposed deep flaws in safety practices, leaving a scar on the environment that would take decades to heal.
And in the blue skies above Canaveral, Florida, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded as millions of people watched on television and on the ground. All 7 crew members aboard were killed. On the technology front in the 1980s, there were major developments. Throughout the 1970s, computers were expensive devices that remained the province of a handful of garage tinkers and multi-billion entities like IBM and NASA. But all that changed during the 1980s, the decade that introduced the world to the video game Pac-Man. IBM released the IBM Model 5150, the first IBM personal computer, to much fanfare in 1981. 1 year later, the Commodore 64 personal computer debuted at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and Time magazine named the computer as its Man of the Year. A computer as the Man of the Year. That's interesting. Anyway, now just some musings. Moving on. Soon, scattered computer users began to communicate with one another through an early network developed by the US Department of Defense, the APRA-Net. In 1983, the network adopted TCP/IP, a set of communications protocols that led to the creation of the internet, and the modern era of computer communications was born. With the personal computer, or PC, now available to middle-class consumers, Microsoft, founded in 1975 by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, soon became the dominant player in PC software. In 1983, Microsoft released Word, a simple, practical word processing program, followed in 1985 by Windows, now the world's most popular computer operating system, and Apple released its first Apple computer in 1984. Communication took another leap forward when Motorola introduced the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, a handheld cellular telephone. Weighing in at 1 pound, 12 ounces and 13 inches tall, the brick-like cell/mobile phone was a novelty at the time, but it heralded the beginning of a new era. And now back onto relationships. The relationship landscape also took on a different shape during this decade. The sex revolution of the 1980s followed on from the initial wave in the 1960s and 1970s.
The American family was changing in the 1980s. Many families felt a need to increase their disposable income, and as a result, more and more women continued entering the workforce. Additionally, broken marriages were becoming more commonplace, with divorce rates reaching their peak in the latter half of the 1970s and remaining high throughout the 1980s. Also, many women were choosing to remain single and pursue professional careers. As a result, single-parent families became a significant part of the American cultural landscape. This led to an increased reliance on daycare, with many small children spending time in nurseries during the day.
Naturally, there was an increase in the acceptance/normalization of premarital sex, and more open discussions about sexuality and a rise in non-monogamous relationships. Dating became less formal during the 1980s, and participating parties could feel more at ease. Grabbing a slice of pizza or watching a movie or getting to know one another on a level that was mutually comfortable became the rage. Coffee dates and meetups for drinks became more common. Phone calls became a common feature of the scene, as did romantic mixtapes. Dating was no longer a prelude to marriage or even a monogamous, committed relationship, and it was open to people of all ages, as we're going to see shortly. People became more explorative in finding a mate. Thus, the emergence of TV shows such as The Perfect Match and Blind Date soared in popularity. Prom culture became part of popular culture and was depicted in many 80s productions/movies. And we're about to watch, or at least look at, some clips of said films that promote prom culture. So one of which was Prom Night, which was released in 1980.
Hey, have you got any mascara? Have you got any mascara? What are you doing? Blue?
Footloose in 1984. Back to the Future in 1985.
Marty, why are you so nervous?
Rain, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you had to act a certain way, but when you got there, you didn't know if you could go through with it?
Oh, you mean like how you're supposed to act on a first date?
Oh, sort of.
Oh, I think I know exactly what you mean.
You do?
You know what I do in those situations?
What?
I don't worry.
And Pretty in Pink in 1986.
I want to hear you say it.
A month ago, I asked somebody else in Africa.
You're a liar! You're a filthy fucking no-go liar! You didn't have the guts to tell me the truth! Just say it!
I'm not lying.
Tell me!
What?
Tell me!
What do you want to hear?
Just tell me!
What?
You're ashamed to be seen with
No,
me!
I am
You're
not.
ashamed to go out with me! You're afraid! You're terrified your goddamn rich friends want to prove! Just tell me the truth!
You don't understand that it has nothing at all to do with you. Dandy!
You can see a great deal of social engineering has taken place or took place during this decade. And of course, as we progress in this series, we'll see more of that. Besides the dating landscape heavily featuring music, film and TV popular culture, mainstream media's shaping of relationships also flourished. The New York Times, in its November 21, 1983 edition, reported about a group of 250 men and women between the ages of 35 to 60, all members of the 4,000-member Westport Unitarian group, met to discuss the acceptable rituals that had developed around dating. Todd Khalif, director for the organization's special programs, reported their collective feelings of insecurity and unsurety on how to proceed. Advice on the subject was offered by Cheryl Mercer, author of Honorable Intentions, The Manners of Courtship in the 1980s, and this was based upon hundreds of interviews Miss Mercer said she had had with singles over the last 2 years, as in between 81 and 83. Miss Mercer, a then 32-year-old publicity director in Manhattan who at the time had never been married, said she wrote the book because she believed there was anarchy in dating today. Again, the 80s. Though having said that, of course, as you will see, there's nothing new under the sun, and some may even say the same thing as to the 2025 landscape. But in any case, moving on. According to Mercer, old rules of courtship no longer apply. She further added, rituals have changed because we have changed. Citing the explosion in the number of midlife singles, increased sexual freedom, and the women's movement, she said that nobody knew any longer what was appropriate and inappropriate behaviour. Blurred lines, eh? Mercer was providing her dating and mating guidance, and she found that the confusion was most profoundly felt by men. According to Mr. Khalif, we have been unseated from our old position. Khalif further added, we are getting mixed messages from women today. We need guidelines. Echoing similar sentiments to Khalif, one middle-aged man in horn-rimmed glasses rose from his seat and said, I feel awkward having sex with someone for the first time. He further commented, what is the right way to deal with that? I mean, I guess that was a question mark and not so much a comment. In any case, Mercer advised that the focus should be on creating an atmosphere of civility and caring, rather than worrying about the sex itself. It's impossible to get over that feeling of awkwardness, according to Mercer. And she further commented, it's best to ease the way by behaving more like a host and concentrating on the ambience. Mercer stated that manners in courtship were traditionally established to make the parties involved feel more comfortable in what has always been a delicate situation. And while the times had changed by the 80s, she stated that keeping this in mind reflects the fundamental goals of relationships and thus should produce the right reactions. One of the male attendees asked how to address circumstances where a woman demands sex from a man soon after meeting her. Mercer reassured him that it was an understandable sentiment and that he should feel no qualms in saying it is too soon, pointing to the fact that women had been doing the same for so many years. A blonde woman in her late 20s wanted to know the mannerly way to end the relationship, and too often, Mercer said, we sneak out the back door, leaving the other person unsure of how to react. Too often, Mercer said, we sneak out the back door, leaving the other person unsure of how to react. Mercer stated that this is not the right way and can be messy. Be straightforward, face up to what you have to say and say it. According to her, be straightforward, face up to what you have to say and say it. A man in the audience disagreed with Mercer, stating that whilst good in theory, it would lead to an argument, which is exactly what the exiting party is seeking to avoid. Miss Mercer countered that though an argument is undesirable, it is the more benign approach than disrespecting your partner by not returning calls with false claims of being busy or evasive actions. As for women seeking a mannerly way to ask a man out without looking too aggressive, Mercer advised that something as old-fashioned as a personal letter should not be overlooked. A note with a mention about an event both individuals might enjoy attending together, she said, is a delicate and gracious way of popping a very difficult question. Now, the state of 1980s romance, in inverted quotation marks, was under significant scrutiny. One pertinent example of this yet again was the New York Times February 13th, 1983 edition. And the article opened with the following pertinent statement. Love, it seems, has fallen upon hard times. Modern statistics indicate that the state of love, much like an overused guitar, has a broken heart or broken heartstrings, an irreparable warp, and frets that have been worn down. Can such an instrument be repaired, refurbished, and brought back to life? By 1983, 1 out of 2 marriages ends in divorce. According to the article, the single scene is plagued by herpes, psychobabble, and other anti-romantic factors. A faltering economy militates against even the old reliable gestures, a dozen roses, a public notice, a declaration of passion, a proposal. As the saying goes, there's no romance without finance. Significantly, by 1984, when adjusted for inflation, salaries doubled from $14,000 to $28,000 between 1949 and 1973. However, between 1973 and 1984, when many boomers started their careers, the real incomes actually fell to $26,000. The article contains a very ironic observation which provides a revealing insight into the development of the romance economy. To be sure, the symbols of love have never been in greater proliferation. Heart-shaped balloons, dangling and dazzling jewelry in identical configuration, avant-garde greeting cards expressing the entire gamut of complicated emotions that the subject of love inspires. And it continues. It does not have to be Valentine's Day to love. The message is not in symbols, not in conventional expressions or arbitrary dictates. It is in real sentiments and in genuine feeling. It is to believe that authentic expressions of love, given, remembrance, are rooted in the deepest recesses of the individual and not in the calendar's demands. It does not have to be Valentine's Day to love. The message is not in symbols, not in conventional expressions or arbitrary dictates. It's an interesting way of putting it. I mean, let me just summarize it in not so many words. Symbols are, maybe not of the greatest importance. Doesn't necessarily convey genuine feeling and desire for a person or love interest. But that being said, one does not need Valentine's Day in order to show expressions of love, so to speak. So I guess that's my kind of summarized way, because there's all these words like arbitrary and dictates and recesses, and I don't want anybody to get too caught up on those words. So yeah, in sum, what they're saying is that the feeling that inspires Valentine's Day expressions is what most counts. Anyway, moving on. While Valentine/love articles of the age were targeted at women and thereby playing on their sensibilities of receiving gifts and less emphasis on giving, many of the modern women were becoming receptive to paying for dates with men. Going Dutch also became more common, especially among younger women seeking a mate in a growingly post-marriage world. Remember, 1983 that we're referring to? By this point, the post-marriage landscape had really taken effect, which of course is why when I mention it in 2025, some people might find it a bit contentious, but this has been going on for a long time. Anyway, I digress. Now that women were increasingly emerging as a major consumer base, this did not go unnoticed by several publications. Cosmopolitan magazine, during the 1980s, took the initiative in subverting more conservative ideas of sexual variety within the confines of marriage, and gradually began to play on their insecurities, which of course was great for business. The more insecure women readers felt about themselves, the more inclined they were to buy products that were advertised in such a way that they purported to cure those uncertainties. When female readers learned about the issues other women had in their relationship and sex lives, they began to wonder if those same issues existed in their own lives. Sound familiar, anyone? Moving on. Now, one example of this was in a Cosmo Agony column in its February 1985 edition. One reader wrote in, expressing concern about her husband's frequent trips to a strip club. She commented that she always saw herself as attractive, but these trips instilled insecurity in her. The Agony columnist, Irma Kurtz, purports to reassure the woman that the trips were not a reflection of her desirability. However, and uncoincidentally, 10 pages after the article, there is an advertisement for Maidenform lingerie. It displays an attractive woman posing seductively in a satin bra and underwear with a caption stating, "Just slipping into satin antique lace makes my life more beautiful." Though Kurtz was right in a sense to reassure the woman that her husband's trips to the strip club was not her fault, it is ethically questionable, to say the least, to place an advert suggesting the purchase of lingerie will make their lives more beautiful. Moreover, there is a lot to be said for how gender relations were transformed by the 1980s. Writer Sue Ellen Browder, in her book Subverted, stated that she published an article in 1985 in Connecticut magazine entitled Romance. Where has it gone? It was a sentimental piece which lamented the loss of romantic love across our land, which was a natural casualty of work schedules cutting into quality time. Now, according to Browder, for many women and men, the unholy marriage between the women's movement and the sexual revolution had spawned loneliness and discontent. The Romance story struck a chord with many readers, prompting an approach by an opportunistic editor of New Woman magazine to write articles on love, intimacy, and troubled relationships. While Betty Friedan had written about the idyllic relationships with men the self-actualized New Woman would enjoy, by the 1980s, according to Browder, if there was one word to describe how real New Woman felt about the sexualized women's movement, that word was ambivalent. It was one thing to insist upon equal pay for equal work, an eminently reasonable request. It's quite another to insist that now, thanks to the pill and abortion, women were sexually, biologically, and emotionally no different from men and should act accordingly. A single young woman, if she was to be regarded as strong, intelligent, and independent, was now expected to hop into bed with a man at least by the third date, to have multiple sexual partners without remorse, and to reject saving sex for marriage as unliberated and old hat. All the sexual rules had been broken, or so women had been told. But the new unspoken sexual rules were even more domineering. For all the public talk about the new woman having control of her own body, she was allowed to say yes to sex, but she wasn't allowed to say no. With respect to this, Browder published Cosmo's first article of January 1985, covering the horror of date rape, the most unreported of all crimes. She stated, "It turned out, of course, that women weren't just like men, hello, and women who struggled to follow the tyrannical new sexual rules in the name of what passed for freedom frequently felt angry, insecure and angst-ridden. Women were hardly alone in their dissatisfactions. Men who had had their adolescent fantasies of sex without responsibility fulfilled often found themselves unspeakably lonely. It turned out that empty sex without authentic love brought no peace, but often only bred an insatiable craving for more. Porn addictions erupted, not just among men on the societal fringes, but among millions of ordinary guys. As a new generation of difficulties arose, thoughtful women began asking new questions, namely, where did it all go so wrong? In a 1988 essay in the New York Times magazine entitled When Feminism Failed, Los Angeles Herald Examiner editor Mary Ann Dolan observed, "What was missing in the new women I saw at the Herald and elsewhere was the joyful I am. What remained was the fearful I want." Bemoaning the rampant devotion to success she witnessed among women at the expense of personal well-being, Dolan added, "The question to me is not whether women can be as ruthless as men. We all know the answer to that. But is it so unreasonable to expect, as we did during the height of the women's movement, that women can be humanizers? ? We ought to ask again, what do we want? ? You know what, yeah? This reminds me of that meme, which many of you can probably relate to. And it has a group of women, and they have their arms up, kind of protesting, saying, "What do we want? We don't know. When do we want it? Now." That's the thought that comes to mind, just as I read out that quote. But in any case, moving on. Meanwhile, relationships between men and women were in tatters. In Newsweek, Kate Ebelin observed that from her perspective, the main message of feminism was, women, you don't need a man. Remember the phrase, a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. That joke circulated through consciousness-raising groups across the country in the 70s. It was a philosophy that made divorce and cohabitation casual and routine. Feminism made women disposable. I haven't actually seen it expressed in those terms, but maybe they're onto something. Or maybe they were onto something. I'll leave that in the balance. According to Browder, this wasn't feminism per se, but the secret marriage of the women's movement with the sexual revolution that persuaded many misguided women to allow themselves to be sexually used and then disposed of, along with their babies, of course, where that may imply. By the early 1980s, victims of the sexual revolution began to appear everywhere. Previously crisp black and white guidelines about how men and women should treat one another seemed to have faded into dim, wavy lines of grey. Single women who wanted to marry couldn't find suitable mates. Sound familiar? Married women were getting divorced. Many career women who'd waited until their mid-30s to have children discovered they'd waited too long and now either had to accept lifelong childlessness or go through the torments of in vitro fertilization and other tortuous medical procedures just to get pregnant. As Ruth Institute founder Jennifer Roback Morse put it, sex without babies had been fun. Babies without sex turned out to be not so much fun. Now, according to Morse, men stripped of the maturity that comes with responsible fatherhood were becoming self-absorbed Peter Pans who couldn't grow up. Very interesting how they put it on men. But what about the Petra Pans? Just food for thought. Moreover, Kate Ebelin in the Newsweek November 18th, 1990 edition wrote of the following in her column entitled The Failure of Feminism. Today, I see feminism as the great experiment that failed, and women in my generation, its perpetrators, are the casualties. Many of us, myself included, are saddled with raising children alone. The resultant poverty makes us experts at cornmeal recipes and ways to find free recreational weekends. At the same time, single men from our generation amass fortunes in CDs and real estate ventures so they can breeze off on ski weekends. Now, just reading out that extract, several things come to mind.